G'day, Stu here from UAV Futures, and today, well, we're going to be looking at this absolute weapon here. Now, this is the Talon from, and I hope I'm saying this right, the Talon from, it's written on the side, Kareya drone. Anyway, I'll link it down below anyway, exactly what it is, but this is the Talon, and the reason I'm so excited for this one is because I love track flying, and I mean, look at this thing. This thing looks like it's going to absolutely tear through the air because of its special frame design, the way the arms are focused. So I'm so excited to show it to you guys. Now, this is a 5-inch racer. What we're going to do in this video, we're going to stick it on the bench, break it down, have a look at how the frame comes together, how the quad comes, and talk about its pros and cons, what I like, what I might like to change, and then in part 2 of the video, we'll take it out, fly it around, and also hand it over to Grumpy Trev. So, enough rambling from me. I'm super excited. Let's stick this thing on the bench and get started. Alrighty, so here it is on the bench, and I've taken the props off so they don't get in the way. They were just some Cyclones that I had on there before. But just look at this thing. The reason I'm so excited, like I see a lot of frames in my time, and you know, it's really exciting when we see one that's a little bit innovating, doing something different. But the best part is when they do it right. When you get a frame and it's doing something different, but it's doing it in a really smart or a really clever or just simple and well-designed way. And I think that's exactly what the Talon's doing. So traditionally when we're flying along, I'll see if I can get another frame. Hold on one sec. So this is a good example. Traditionally when we're flying around, this is the Wizard. You can see we've got all this arm space here, which is blocking out a lot of air. So you're losing a lot of thrust that's going down right here. And what people have tried to do for a long time is have some really thin arms. So another example here, and tried to combat that, we've got here, this is the Twig, which I had, which was an absolute weapon. This one was almost too fast to fly. But you can see just how thin these arms are. So I have broken some Twig arms, and they're not the strongest. So it's a bit of a compromise between either going a bit stronger or super thin and super light but more chance to break. Now the Talon is so exciting because you have super thin arms here, so it should be absolutely hammering and cutting through the air, but look at the thickness of them. They're actually just turned 90 degrees, so you're going to have a lot less, I guess, disruptance of your thrust. You've got a much bigger area for the air to blow down, and these arms aren't going to be getting in the way, but they still should be super strong. Now that does come with some design issues because you need to do some things a little bit different. It is a little bit more difficult to mount the motors, and it is a little bit more difficult to secure it to the frame in a very rigid, solid way, but I'm really excited because I think this 5-inch racer from Kareya Drones does it very, very well. Anyway, that's enough rambling of why I'm excited about this quad. Let's jump in and let's have a look at it in detail at all the parts. Alrighty, now I guess we'll go through the components very quickly because look, this one came just like this, and I don't know if they sell some bind and flies or if they sell full kits or just the frames. I'll link it all down below anyway. This is how mine came, so we'll very quickly run through the components and then we're going to talk about the frame. Now, I think this thing is going to be an absolute weapon because on the outside we've got some ZMX 2207 2552 kV motors, so those motors are very, very powerful. I'm going to feel a little bit sorry for my battery actually because I think I'm going to be absolutely hammering this around. Towards the middle we've got a 4-in-1 D-Shot ESC. Above that is an F4 flight controller. I'm going to flash a picture on the screen. I think that's really important. You need a 4-in-1 in this build because you want to keep that thin profile on the arms unless you wanted to tape it to the outside, but I think you sort of the reason of this part is all about having thin arms, so and reducing that drag. So I think a 4-in-1 ESC is necessary. We've got an F4 flight controller on the top. I've created my own IS6C receiver in there, so you can fit some stuff in there. And then on the top, a TBS Unify Pro with a tiny little one of these awesome little, what are these? I like these antennas. These are the Lumineer ones right here. And then we've just got our Swift FPV camera at the front. Now at the back, we do have a nice big capacitor because, you know, that's meant to reduce some of that electrical noise. So we'll see. And I like the big long cord at the back. It should make it very easy. I'm going to zip tie that down, make it very easy for plugging in our battery. Now, let's get on to the good stuff. Let's talk about the frame. So on the outside, you notice, if I flip it over here, it has a very, very thin, I guess, profile when it's going to be cutting through the air. So one of the hardest parts is when you've got arms this way, it's very difficult to mount the motors. Now, I know some of the other companies out there, they do mount their arms this way, but I haven't seen any that put aluminium parts on the outside. I've seen a few with 3D printed parts. So it's nice to see some of this aluminum or aluminium, however you want to say it, right here. That's going to screw down very securely to your motor, so it's going to make it nice and snug. And something that I'm pretty impressed about, I thought this might have a bit of flex, but this is one of the most rigid frames I've ever felt, especially considering that it's for individual arms. So if you are going to break something, the arm should be pretty easy to replace. Something that you also have to worry about is in a crash, how is those frontal, like if you really smash into something, how is that force going to impact onto the rest of your quad, and what's to stop this arm snapping off? Because look, carbon is very strong one way, but if you apply the force the other way, it's not going to do very well. So in this axis, this carbon is going to be like a tank, but if you had a big impact from the side, you know, you'd be likely to snap that, which is exactly why you've got this little brace plate right here. Now I've got these two side brace plates. I'm not 100% sure, does it come with a front brace plate? I don't know, it looks like there'd definitely be an option, so maybe that's an option. Mine didn't come with it, but it looks like you definitely could if you just designed one up, or they might even sell some, I'll link it down below anyway, where if you wanted to even have some brace plates across the front, that would make it even more rigid, like I guess a very, very strong little cube. Now the star of the show for me in this frame, there's two parts. I love how it opens, and we'll talk about the canopy and the hood part in a little bit, but it's this part here, this machined part of aluminium, which makes it a very, very rigid, secures to the frame very, very nicely, allows you to get that very, very quick drag reduced cross section of the frame. Now frames these days, the top part is getting smaller and smaller, and I'm all for that, except I don't like it when it becomes difficult to mount some of your components in there, because I use the IA6C receiver, which is, look, a pretty big receiver, and I'm happy to say that fits comfortably in here. And I don't think we need our pods to be super small, because there's no point of them being smaller than the battery. Now, let's have a look at one of the features I like. So at the side here, you can see you do have some options for how you're going to mount your camera, you know, and what sort of angle that you're going to have. I do worry a little bit about camera protection, and I thought it might be for prop strikes or something like that to try and keep this out of the way. But I wish maybe if this came out just a little bit more, and we had maybe one more standoff underneath to protect your camera, because I feel like in this frame the camera is a little bit exposed. I know a lot of frames do it like this, like the GT2 and some others, they really have their camera hanging out the front. And I think on the Talon there is room just to put in, maybe they could redesign this little top part just a little bit to have an extra standoff there, because cameras are some of the most expensive parts, and I definitely feel like I break them more often than not. They're one of the parts that I break the most. Now all we've got right here, we've got two little screws, if I can get the right little hex driver, hang on, is this one. Alright, so what we do, get out of the way. So if you're like me at the field, if something breaks or you want to work on your quad a little bit, all you have to do is unscrew these two parts at the front. I'll simply unscrew those. There's two. You can see I already loosened the two screws at the back here, so there's just two in the exact same spot. Now all I have to do is, if I unplugged my camera, well, you can sort of see here, you can if you unplugged your camera, this thing can slide right off, and you can totally detach it and allow you to do some work. Now I've got my stuff crammed in there, so I don't want to open up too much, but I think that's a great option. Like, a lot of frames can take a lot of time if you've got standoffs, or if you've got some of those ones where you screw in and then you've got that little attachment bolt. That can be an absolute nightmare and can be so fiddly, but these ones right here with two little press nuts screwed into the carbon, it's going to secure it down, and I think I'm really a big fan of that option. It sort of borrows from the GT2. I think it's a really easy way to work on your frame, so that's something that I really like as well. Now a frame like this, I definitely think this is catering more for that racing style, less about the acro, and definitely more for track and field, which is exactly what I like. I like flying around flags and fields. You can see if you did want to attach a GoPro, you've got a really nice gentle slope here, so you know it's probably not going to be quick enough, but you do have a nice big Velcro part here. If you wanted to loop that around, you can see this nice big slit right there. You can slide some Velcro to it, and it's going to make it very easy for attaching your GoPro, because I'm all about GoPro action and HD action, and being able to easily put that on your racing quad, I'm really a big fan of that. Now this would probably be a perfect candidate if you wanted to put something in here like the Runcam split. So if I've got the split right here, if I was going to put this in, I reckon with some clever building I could, maybe not with the IA6C receiver. I would definitely need a bit of a smaller receiver in there, because there's no real room with the IA6C, but some of the like XM minis or something like that, I think this would fit very, very well. So if you're on FrSky or you wanted to use a bit of a smaller receiver, I think you're going to have a great time, especially if you wanted to put something in like this. You would have an absolute weapon that are also recorded in some 1080p. Now that's a bit of a look at how the frame goes together. Let's have some measurements now. So if you're worried about the arms snapping, let's zero this off. I think they're coming in at, they look like there might be a 3mm bit of carbon. Oh no, where we go. A 4mm bit of carbon on those arms. These little parts right here, these little braces I guess, they're 5mm across and They're 3.5 millimeters thick, so they're not quite those parts there, those little braces. They're not quite as strong, but I don't think they need to be. If anything's going to break, I think it would be these two parts, and that impact there, and if it really was a big crash and that broke, that's very easy to replace. I would much prefer to replace that than an entire arm, or worse yet, a big banged up pod section or anything like that, because those parts will be very cheap. This part, not so much. Now towards the back, of course, you do have these two little antenna holders. My antennas didn't fit because this one came with a FrSky receiver, so I've just swapped that out. I've still got a little bit of work to do before we take it out and fly it around. But this is where it looked absolutely amazing before I put in my IS-6C, when it just had the FrSky receiver in the back. Then also at the back, you've just got this little section for screwing down your FPV antenna on a little pigtail, something that comes off like the Unify Pro or something like that. Alrighty, so that's a bit of a look at the frame. Let's stick it on the scales and find out how much it weighs. Alrighty, take your bets. I reckon it's probably going to be the same as, a little bit less than maybe a Chameleon or something like that. 324 grams. That's not bad. Alright, I think that's pretty good versus something like, this is one of my favorite quads. This is the Chameleon. If you haven't seen this review, definitely go check that out. But you can see it's a bit lighter than the Chameleon. So even though this one's got props on here and also a GoPro mount, these motors are significantly bigger and we're still coming in fairly light. So I'm going to predict, and I think you guys are going to be very impressed, when we take this thing out and rip it around, it is going to absolutely destroy it, especially in those straight line speeds. And hopefully some of these, I guess with its cross section, it's going to absolutely tear it up in the corners as well. Alrighty, so there it is. There's my part 1 review of the Talon from Korea. My part 1 review of the Talon anyway, and I think this is definitely one of the most rigid, strongest frames that I've seen that has its arms going this way. Now I know it can be a little bit difficult in the past, like a lot of people have tried to do this. This one's doing it right. I love the aluminium mounts around the side. I love the brace plates. It feels extremely rigid, and probably another thing that I really like as well is just how easy it is to take the top off there, pop the hood, or pop the bonnet, whatever you want to call it, and then you can do some work on the inside. So I'm going to predict this thing is going to absolutely rip when we do some full speed runs, which I can't wait to check out. Anyway, that's what we're going to do in the part 2 video, so make sure you subscribe because we'll take it out, we'll fly it around, I'll show you some footage of this thing, and we'll also give it some commentary, and then most importantly, we'll also hand over to Grumpy Trev and see what he thinks about the Talon. Anyway, other than that, subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying. Also too, if you've got some comments like, what do you think about the Talon? Do you think most frames will be going this way? Do you think they've done a good job? Have you seen many other frames like this? Anyway, drop all those comments down below. Alright, happy flying. Alrighty, so hopefully you guys enjoyed that video. Definitely subscribe if you're new to the channel and check out these videos. And I'm also going to leave a little link here to my Patreon page because I've got some fantastic Patreon supporters and I like to give back to them as well. So if you want to join the UAV Futures family, there's things like bonus Velcro straps, little bundles of FPV goodies and things like that that also get sent out. Anyway, happy flying.